Welcome to the Leader Impact Podcast. We are a community of leaders with a network in over 350 cities around the world, dedicated to optimizing our personal, professional, and spiritual lives to have impact. This show is where we have a chance to listen and engage with leaders who are living this out. We love talking with leaders, so if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions to make the show even better, please let us know. The best way to stay connected in Canada is through our newsletter at leaderimpact.ca or on social media at LeaderImpact. And if you're listening from outside of Canada, check out our website at leaderimpact.com. I'm your host, Lisa Peters, and our guest today is Andy Howard. For over 20 years, Andy has served in ministry as a youth pastor and a marriage ministry pastor. He has found that nothing much changes in each role, just that some come with more wrinkles and less hair. Andy is an advocate for mental health awareness, as he has known the heaviness of depression himself. He is passionate about fighting against the awful attack of mental health issues that are running rampant across the human race. At his heaviest, Andy weighed 345 pounds, and his wife, Tiffany, weighed 317 pounds. Together, they have lost over 350 pounds combined and have co-founded a health coaching business called Taking Back My Life, where they have helped thousands of people get healthy as well. Andy currently lives outside of Dallas, Texas, with his wife, Tiffany, and their three beautiful daughters, Payton, Parker, and Presley. Today, we actually want to talk to Andy a little bit about his new book, When Words Don't Come Easy, and dive deep into the conversations we have with ourselves. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa. It is an honor to be on, and I'm excited to chat with you for a little bit here.
You know, it's funny because when I read your book, you talk about weight, but you did not tell me these numbers. So that's incredible, and what a commitment! I think I say congratulations. Like, that's amazing.
Thank you so much. It's a dream come true. Honestly, I talk about it in the book, but the very thing that almost killed us is the thing that has brought us life. And I think it's just wild how that happens in so many different areas of my life. I could say that about, but it was my weight that was holding me back in so many areas of my life, and especially in health. And now, how God has a little bit of a sense of humor, I would have never saw myself helping so many people lose weight, and so it's very funny and very wild how that's come about.
I love that you said God has humor, because yes, he does.
Yes.
So I usually ask my guests, and I know that people all around the world always love to hear a little bit about yourselves, because I think, wherever you're living, we all live differently. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live here in Dallas, outside of Dallas, Texas. And as you mentioned in the bio, I'm a daddy of three girls, Parker, Presley, and Payton. And I'm married to Tiffany, my wife. I love sports. So absolutely, if I'm not speaking or traveling, you will find me glued to a game somewhere. That's just how I love to pass the time. But that's a little bit about me. And I love, arts. I love music. I love creating music. I play music. I love writing. That's my passion. And so just finished the book, and I'm a fellow podcaster as well. So love connecting with people, and that's just a little bit about myself.
Yeah, you did just finish this book. I think the copyright's like 2022. So this just came out.
Yes, came out in September.
Okay.
So it is brand new, and just excited to hopefully I spread it to as many people. It's about hope. That's the story of my life, is about hope. Yeah. And so hopefully this book will help some people.
Awesome. Wow, good. So, and I realized, so I'm going to switch the lens to like professional. We're going to talk a little bit about your actually book, but I realized you have a health coaching business, and I wanted to focus more on your book, When Words Don't Come Easy. But what was the reasoning for writing the book and the title?
Well, the title is kind of a funny story as well. So I knew for a decade I was supposed to write this book. That's when I first started experiencing the depression, when my oldest daughter, who's about to be 15 now, when she went through everything with her diagnosis. She's got cerebral palsy and 10% brain function. It's a pretty bad case. But I went through depression after that point. And on the other side of coming out of depression, so about a decade now, I've known I'm supposed to tell this story. And it wasn't until after 2020 when it felt like depression was at all-time heights across everywhere I looked at, across the U.S. here, I'm sure in Canada as well. But it wasn't until then that I knew I really got to get this story out. So the only thing I knew for the whole time was the title of my book. It was going to be The Beauty in the Broken.
Oh,
And when I got to to my team and was pitching the ideal and everything, they said the only thing is we can't use that title. And
oh,
that's apparently it's a number one hit from romance novels that I didn't know nothing about. Maybe I was going to reach a totally different audience, but at that time I had wrote a song 20 years ago coming up in May for my wife for well, it was actually our wedding at the time, and it was called When Words Don't Come Easy, and it was really ended up being somewhat prophetic through some of the things we've gone through in our marriage that I had no idea at the time. But I just wanted to write something to her that I promised I would be there no matter what, no matter what happens, no matter what comes, no matter what trials we face. And since then, she lost her mom and her dad shortly into our marriage, and she lost her only sister as well. And then all the things that happened with my oldest daughter. So it has been a lot of things we've had to overcome. But you know what? I've held on to that promise, and we're still going on strong, 20 years now, and coming up in a couple months here. So just excited to see what's next.
yeah. I find it because there is always a timing, and the timing
Yeah.
was right now for you to write the book. I know it's been 20 years because it took 20 years to get ready to write here. I just believe that. I
Yeah.
never want
Yeah.
to look back and go, oh, I regret, I should have, I could have. No, right now it was meant. So
Well, thank you. I feel the same way, and especially after the pandemic and everything happened, and then people were shut in, and just it felt like anxieties and depression and everything was just at an all time high. And so, I believe myself, God's timing is always perfect, and so even though back then I could have wrote the book. I don't know. Everything has just fallen into place. And looking back, I'm just pleased at the timing, and that I agree with you. Now's the time.
yeah, all right. So in this book, there is a section that you talk about the common things people contend with in their marriage. Now, I want to use that same content. I don't know if you're up for this, but use that same content to change the conversation. Just because our podcast, we're really, we're trying to reach the people who are integrating their personal, professional, and spiritual. So I'm going to sort of
Yeah.
change the content, if you're up, to if we can discuss those sections to the most common things people contend with in our lives. And
Mm.
I think I'm fine. I'm going to flip open my book because my book is written all over. I love when
Oh,
I do
wow.
that. Yeah, it's like just a gong show. But yeah, so we're going to go through these and just the common things people contend with in their lives. And I'm going to let you start, and then I'm just going to keep writing.
Oh, of course. Well, number one, and this does correlate with so much. This particular chapter was focused on our marriage, but all these 5 things that we're going to talk about, no matter where you're at in your life, whether you're married or not, whether it's professionalism, whether you're chasing a dream, a goal, whatever your desire is, even as a leader, these 5 things apply to your life. The first thing was expectations. And I remember working for a pastor once, and a good friend of mine, a mentor, and he always told me, inspect what you expect. And for that, I mean, we had goals, right? And I was the youth pastor, and I had people who worked for me under my group, and was still under the church and still under his leadership. But we would have these meetings once a month, and he would always say, inspect what you expect. Because sometimes you can have expectations, you can have things set up, but if you just leave them to chance, right? If you don't inspect, if you don't ask questions, if you don't get in there, how do you know, one, if it's meeting your expectations, but where are you going, right, with it? So I love that always, that's the goal that I've always kept, is always inspect what you expect, always ask questions, don't leave anything up for chance, and just search for more.
Yeah. And I even find that even going into your book, we go into it with our expectations. We go
Yeah.
into situations at work. We go into leading groups. We have these expectations. So I like that. Inspect. That is a great way to put that. Yeah.
For sure.
Because
And you're absolutely right. Expectations in our own mind, right? And then you don't even So if you never inspect it, you don't ask questions, you don't communicate, and that's another one. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but if you don't let these out, uh, your partner in a marriage or your business partner in business or as leaders, if you don't communicate or if you don't seek what's going on, even if you're by yourself, if you're your own company by yourself, you're the main cog, you're the leader, you need to circle back after whatever the event is, after whatever you've done. Did this line up with our goals? Did this line up with what I'm doing as I'm branding myself? And just ask yourself some questions, inspect what you expect. That way you can know going forward, hey, maybe it didn't go, maybe it flopped, whatever your event was or your ideal was. That's okay. It's okay to flop. But what's not okay is to stay down and not learn from it, is one of the things I've learned.
Yeah. We learn more from our flops.
Oh, yes,
Yes,
of course.
Yeah. All right. I'll let you continue.
The second one is pursuit. And I had mentioned this as far as in marriage, but we're going to apply this everywhere. But you know how when you're everything's, I don't want to say hot and heavy. When you're first in love, when you first find your girlfriend, boyfriend, your significant other, it's so easy, right? Because you're in that puppy love. Everything's just so happy. They can't do nothing wrong. In fact, the things that drive you crazy about them later are the things that attract you to them. And so for me, it's that pursuit that keeps your marriage going well. And that's the same in no matter what you're doing, whatever that drove you to start your business or whatever that's driving you as a leader, whatever your goals are. Do not ever get to a place where you've arrived. Like sometimes it's so easy to get comfortable and so, well, I've made it. I've made it. I'm married now almost 20 years. I don't have to pursue my wife anymore because we're married. She's with me, right? And no, it's that pursuit of constantly saying, I brought you flowers 20 years ago, so I can't just say, well, I've already gave you the flowers. We have to constantly pursue. And so even as a leader, where are you, right? Did you just arrive and say, well, I'm here now. I don't have to get any better. I feel like we can always grow. We can always learn. And like you just mentioned, we learn so much from our flops, our mistakes. There's always so much more to go. And when you get to a place where you've arrived or you are satisfied, that is a dangerous place. That's a scary place because it's very easy to get comfortable and you don't even realize that there is a backtrack, that you're slipping away because you're comfortable.
Yeah. The pursuit of the dream is very uncomfortable. And it should be. Yeah. Because then if it's not, it's maybe not the dream that or the pursuit that you should be doing. Like you should be uncomfortable. Yeah. So I like your just when you get all nice and this is good.
You should be concerned. Yes. when things are comfortable, that's when you need to be concerned. That is really good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think of pursuing the things that we want, because if we don't, someone else will. Like those ideas are floating out there. And if you don't grab on them, or if you don't grab that thing, yeah.
And it's true. And that's the same, gosh, that's the same point with marriage or with your significant other, that if you quit pursuing, somebody else will. And that doesn't give, and I'm not going to go down a rabbit trail, it doesn't give them a pass by any means. But at the same point, that appreciation of the pursuit is there. And that's what I wanted to come across with that dream, chasing that dream. Once you get that carrot, what's next, right? What's next? So always ask yourself, which goes back to the expectations. Inspect what you expect. What is next? Always ask those questions so you can keep going forward. Because if you're not going forward, that's when you get stagnant.
Yeah, good. All right. Next one.
Third, number 3 is communication, and some of these do flip flop with each other a little bit here and there, but communication is so huge in every area of our life. And I think so many times from where I wrote it from, the standpoint is communication, maybe expectations. All these things are kind of in our head, but it's easier to communicate than it is to read your spouse's mind. It's easier to communicate than to read your business partner's mind, or even someone who, whatever it is, if you're leading someone, whatever you do, whoever you work with, it takes communication. The greatest teams, the champions of any sports team, you will find it takes talent, it takes skills, but the communication is so huge with that, whether it's from the coach to the player, whether it's from player to player on the team in the game. And the better we can get at communicating, it's just being understood. It's just speaking a language of understanding, because expectations may seem so crystal clear to me. In my head, I see exactly how this is going to go. But if you are not communicating, uh, it's like you're speaking two different languages, and then you end up with, how did we miss this so bad? Maybe we should have communicated. And so that's where I was going with that point.
Yeah. I also think of the communication with ourselves, what we are asking of ourselves, what we are saying to ourselves. Because when I look at the title, when words don't come easy, I think of what I am saying to myself to what I am putting out there, And we actually did a podcast. It was our third podcast, Howard Olson. And it was the third one. And he talks about the power of words and the power of words you are communicating. How are you talking to people? How are they talking to you? And I think of like the people you surround yourself with. If they're talking trash to you, or what are you talking trash back? Like
Yeah.
How
and even
yeah.
Even more important, how are you talking to yourself? You just touched on a very special nugget for me. I can be the worst. I can be the hardest on myself. I do have expectations. I have goals. I have dreams. I'm very driven. And then sometimes after I speak at an event, or after I do a podcast, or I write something, I judge myself so harshly. And my wife will tell me, she's like, you wouldn't let anyone talk to your kids that way, or you wouldn't let anyone talk to me that way. So why are you talking to yourself that way? And so that's another thing that I do agree with you 100%. The power of words are so powerful. So how are you talking to yourself? Are you uplifting yourself, or are you hanging out with people who are uplifting you, or are people talking negative and bringing you down?
Yeah. Because you don't have to be hard on me, because I'm already hardest on me.
That's true. So true.
Right? Yeah. Oh, this is good. Good stuff.
Well, the fourth one is rejection. And rejection is hard from a relationship standpoint. It's extremely hard. But who doesn't hate rejection? I don't know that anyone just out there right now listening to this podcast saying, oh, me. I just love being rejected. There is so much mental battle that comes with not being good enough. And it doesn't even mean that. And so with rejection, sometimes there are some positive feedback that has to happen. But I always try to frame it, the feedback, as good as possible by even like a sandwich method of saying, hey, Lisa, I want you to know that this is coming from my heart, that I really appreciate you, and I love what you're doing with your podcast, or something complimentary first, before just, if you were to just call someone in your office as a leader and just say, Bob, really, you totally went the wrong way with how we were going with this thing. I mean, it's the same thing. You're saying the same message, but by framing it a better way and coming from a spot of gratitude, I think rejection or positive feedback is received so much better.
Yeah. As you're saying, things pop into my head. And I just read this morning, I'm reading Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and she talks about building trust with your teams. And the one thing I'd have to go back and read it, but she talked about hugging. And, she comes in and, they hugged, and then she gave them feedback, which was hard. But she came at it in a trust, like, you're doing great. Like, I'd have to read it again, but it was, not everybody's into hugging. Let's just say that.
Well, for sure. So you might want to know your audience, but now I'm a hugger. I'm from the South. I'm from Texas. I think we all hug. We either have hugs or guns. It's kind of both ways down here. I'm just kidding. Totally. Oh, not really. I mean, it's very, if you've ever been to Texas, but you would know your audience. But back to that trust is massive. And so I bet and I'm sorry, I missed the name of the person that wrote this book, but I bet no matter what she has to say after she has just loved on them or gave them a hug and built that trust, they are 100% positive that going to receive from it. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. No one really likes feedback, but it's at the same time, feedback is what makes us better. It makes us grow. It's what makes, when we talked about the flops earlier, well, how do we get better from that? If you have no one in your corner giving you feedback, chances are you won't get better. You'll just keep repeating the same mistakes until eventually no one has you back for whatever you're doing, or you run out of jobs. You keep moving on to the next, moving on to the next. So feedback is huge. It's massive.
And I think it's way easier to take feedback, rejection when there's that relationship. And it's Kim Scott's book that she talked about building that relationship. Before you give the rejection, make sure you've built the relationship, and it'll be taken differently. So, yeah.
I love that. The number 5, the last one, is grace. And we talked about it a little bit when I said I wouldn't talk. My wife was saying you wouldn't allow someone else to talk to you that way. Why are you talking to yourself that way? Give yourself grace. Grace is something that's incredibly generous, totally unexpected, and totally undeserved. Yeah. So next time that I don't know what it is, whatever, you fill in the blank right here, that you feel like something does not go the way you wanted it to go.
I'm going to give you one.
Give yourself grace. Okay, yes.
Yeah, because this is in your book.
Okay, awesome.
So on page 128, you talk about, I'll just read it from you. And you say, for over a decade, I didn't write this book because I listened to the father of lies. I had a list of I am not that told me why I shouldn't start. I am not qualified. I am not a writer, and I'm not an influencer, and I'm not smart. Enough of that. I am not. You can fill in the blank. And at that point, I read that, and I was like, Andy, give yourself some grace.
It's true. It's true. And I do talk about it. I go on to talk about it in the book about my self-esteem issues. And it's for no other reason. It's just an attack of what I believe is attack of the enemy. I don't know. Everyone's listeners may be different here, but you are created for a purpose. No matter where you're at, I just want you to know you are created for a purpose. And there is something that only you can do, that you have a design, you have a purpose that only you can meet. And I feel that with all my heart. And if you don't step out and have grace, and you know what? Fail forward. I say that all the time. Fail forward. If you just mess up, it's okay. What's not okay is staying down. So do it scared. I had to, and it got easier. I never saw myself ever finishing the book. I talked about it for over a decade. My wife used to even have a running joke of, oh yeah, the book you're writing. And then one day I sat down and I said, I'm going to do it. She had heard that for 10 years, but I said, I'm going to do it. And you know what? I did it one day at a time, one chapter at a time, one line at a time, really one word at a time. And was it perfect? I still don't know that it's perfect, but what happened is I started gaining confidence as I would have the bravery and the guts to share it with some close friends. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm trying to write this book. Would you read this chapter, or would you read this paragraph? And so many who came back and said, Andy, oh my gosh, this is so good. And that built more confidence. So I could say, well, maybe I can write another chapter. Maybe I can write another paragraph. So yes, have grace on yourself. If you're not going to do it, definitely no one else is going to do it. So have grace for yourself.
Yeah. Granting grace. I use that a lot. Like grant them grace. Grant yourself grace, grant them grace. Just, you don't know what's going on in the lives. And I have loved these 5. I love how we've switched it a little bit to just being more about our lives. Because, I mean, yes, marriage, but we all have to work. We all have to, we have families, we have volunteer work.
Yes.
Wherever we are, we can go through any of these. I've loved it.
I agree with you 100%. Thank you so much. And I would have never thought about doing that until you had emailed some suggestions. And I think it's a brilliant idea. It's brilliant.
It's awesome. So we usually switch our podcast a little bit because we want to, we move forward, and we're going to switch into the spiritual side. And you served in ministry as a youth pastor and a marriage ministry pastor. So I don't know if you can give us a little glimpse, because obviously you have been in faith your whole life, and how Tell us a little bit about that.
So yes, my mom and dad were pastors growing up. So I was about 5 years old when I accepted, Christ into my life. We were at a kids crusade way back then. And I'm not going to give you the whole full story, but I have grown up though, being raised in church, being raised by pastors, and I've had a close relationship with the Lord all for most of my life. I was when Payton was born, and I'll never forget it. We were at the chief neurologist's office at Dallas Children's Medical Center. It's one of the biggest specialty children's hospitals in the world, really, but especially in this area. So we were at Dallas, and so the chief neurologist, anytime you see him, it's not good. And I'll never forget. He walked in with a box of Kleenexes, and he told us, guys, it's me and my wife. He said, there's no easy way to tell you this, but your daughter's got 10% brain function, and she's not going to be able to talk. She's not going to be able to walk. She has really no muscle tone. She won't be able to use her hands to like pick up a pencil, her fingers to pick up a pencil, but she might be able to use her arms to give you a hug or hug a pillow. She's legally blind, just all these things. And at some point he started sounding like Charlie Brown's teacher, just kind of, it was fading in the background. And I was just overwhelmed with just this sadness. But at that point, I was like, Lord, I believe you can do anything. I personally believe in healing, and God, you can do this. And if you choose to, and I'm just going to be the dad. I'm going to beat down the doors of heaven every single day until she gets her healing. I'm going to stand firm. And that happened, for the next 3 months or so, every day to and from. I also worked outside of the church because it was bivocational. And so I was a data entry clerk at a place, but it was about an hour from home. So I would drive to work and from work, just praying, God, you can heal Payton. You can heal Payton. But somewhere along the way, those prayers that were honest and sincere, they turned bitter. In fact, I talk about it in the book, but, kind of the John 11 story with Mary and Martha and Lazarus. And they're like, Jesus, had you been here, man, my brother wouldn't have died. Somewhere along the way, I was like, God, don't you owe me something? I mean, I don't make any money as a youth pastor, and it was never about money. It was about the call. It really was serving people. But it's like, don't you owe me this one? If anything, you could have helped Payton. And so I became depressed. It was about a 4-year season where I was still serving as a youth pastor, still trying to do the right things, putting a smile on my face where people didn't know how bad it was, how hard it was. In fact, 10 years ago, this interview seemed impossible, Lisa, just being honest with you. I didn't know that I would be here 10 years ago. And so God has restored that in my life. And I don't want this question to drag out and get too long, but there was, even as a man of faith and deep faith, it doesn't mean you don't face trials, and it doesn't mean that you're too good for something like depression or something to sneak up on you. And again, the very thing that was meant to kill me has now been put into a book, and I'm able to travel and share this story now. And I'm seeing so many dads, so many wives, even so many kiddos from my youth ministry days. So I speak at youth camps, youth conferences. I'm seeing so many people with anxiety and depression are able to relate to my story, and you know what? They're getting help from it. So I can see the full picture now. It doesn't mean it's any easier, but I do have an understanding, and I know one day she will be healed. I believe that with all my heart when she makes it home to heaven. But and who knows? God could still do that here. He still could. But right now he is using her story. Cause I used to pray that's one thing. I'm sorry, I'll wrap this up. But that's one thing I used to pray at the very end of each prayer. God, use her story to reach millions. And I just thought in my own infinite wisdom that God's going to, I don't know, take her story and see her raised out of her wheelchair, and she's going to go, her video will go viral. But you know what? He's using her story to reach millions. Now, here I am on a podcast with Lisa Peters, who I never would have thought I would know outside of technology now, and just getting to reach out to the right people. And God is using her story to reach millions. And it's not the way I thought it would happen, but it's pretty cool to see the big picture of what he can do through our heartaches and through our pains.
Yeah, I think when we're in that heartache and pain, we can't see out.
Yeah.
And, I go back to some of the message you talked about, and I think of, who we're surrounding ourselves with. Because there's times when I can't pray. Like it's so hard. And I think we need to surround ourselves. And that's what LeaderImpact does. There's a group of leaders that get together, and challenges do not, they enter our lives too, but as leaders, we have people we can talk to. And, if it's your youth groups, if it's your work, if it's volunteer school,
that's what I found. Yeah. The more you open up about it and help and ask for help. That's the hard part, right? We all want to take care. I'm independent. I can take care of myself. And it's kind of natural to take care but asking for help seems needy and seems like you're putting someone out. But the more you ask for help, that burden gets lighter. Now, no longer Andy is just carrying this burden. Now I have Andy and Tiffany has come alongside me, and she's helping me carry this burden. And then the more I tell one more person, well, here comes Bob. He's going to help me carry my burden. So it gets lighter each time you share your story is what I've found.
Yeah. And I think, and I'll like say leaders, but everyone finds it so hard to ask for help. We don't want to be seen as weak. Here you are living this, and you're in depression, and you're 4 years, and you're still going to youth, and still being D, but inside and we go around like that.
And I would encourage you out there, because it's hard to see, right? But maybe if you ask those questions when we talked about, hey, are you really doing okay? Are you good? Take a second to ask those questions, because for the longest, my first answer, the first time I was always asked, how are you, was always fine. Doing fine. How are you? And it became such a recording. It was a soundtrack of my mind. I'm doing fine. How are you? And so it was just a go-to. I even had the smile to match it. And most people, oh, good. And of course, he's a pastor, so he's fine. So sometimes listen to your heart, listen to your gut, and say, Andy, are you really doing okay? Is there something I can help you with or pray with? And maybe they are fine, and that's fine. But sometimes the second question is where they let their guard down and say, actually, will you help me with this? So,
and I go right back to the relationships you have at work. If you're a leader, build those relationships.
Yes.
Then, I'm fine. And you're going to pick up, no, I don't know if you are, come on into my office.
Yeah.
Let's sit down. So
good. Yeah. Back to that trust.
Yeah, it's good. So I usually sort of prep you with maybe a question or two, and I'm not sure if I did this one. So this might be a throw, but,
you're good.
And maybe you've already asked this, but have you ever been on your own path? Like, I know what's best for me, and then God used disruption to realign your plans for the greatest purpose. Now, maybe you've answered that, but I don't know if you have an example.
Very similar was I thought I would be in ministry forever. I thought I'd be a lifer, and I am still, I guess, technically in ministry. I feel like so much that I do, it's more evangelizing now. I'm going church to church, or I'm going to school assemblies, or I'm going to youth camps now. I'm not at one church, but I thought I would just be a lifer in ministry. And what happened through the weight loss journey and then starting our own business, helping people, I actually found out I get to do ministry more now than I did as a pastor. It's so funny. Having that pastor title intimidates a lot of people. It is so wild how many people think that, oh, I just have everything perfect in my life because I am a pastor, and I don't understand. So I couldn't possibly understand what you're going through because I am just up here. I don't sin. I don't have this or that. Everything's just perfect in my life because I'm a pastor, which couldn't be more opposite. I don't want to say that just means you are a sinner all the time. But no, you have your own challenges like everybody else faces. And so now what's happened though, as some dude that's writing a health plan for you now, they're like, hey, if somebody will let their guard down about their weight, I think that's like one of the hardest things to let someone intimate with is say, you know what, I got on the scale this morning, I weigh whatever, this number. After that, gosh, you talk about speed of trust. It has built up so much trust that if they will talk to you about your weight, they will talk to you about pretty much anything after that. And so that's what we have found when we do a call, like Tiff and I will call to check in on someone, and for it's supposed to be just their weekly goal check. And then all of a sudden they're like, you know what, actually, I got off plan this week. I didn't do it this week. But it wasn't even about plan. It was about, well, you know what, my sister died this week. And wow, you know what, all of a sudden, it's not saying we don't care about your health goals anymore. But at that particular moment, it's no longer about, hey, did you lose any weight this week? It's about, hey, would you mind if we prayed for you? And it's been situations like that where God is using us just as Christians, not as a title, not as a pastor, technically as a health coach, as a health and wellness company, more than as a pastor, but just being available now to do whatever he wants for us.
Yeah. It's funny when you said that, because I don't have a fitness coach, but I business coach. And I specifically chose my business coach because she was a Christian. Because when she struggles, she says to me, "Can I pray for you?" And
that's cool.
And I remember the first one initially said to me something like, if you believe in that stuff, like God. And I'm like, I think we're done. Okay. But I mean, because this is my business. This is my life. This is my chosen, or this is my purpose. And I need someone to just look out for my spiritual guidance sometimes.
It's so good. Yeah. And I have heard this, and you've probably heard this before too, but that you're like the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so just be very careful who you let in your inner circle. If you start seeing yourself go down a path that you're like, I would have never saw myself doing that. Andy doesn't do things like that, or Andy doesn't talk like that, or I would have to go back to that inspect what you expect and say, well, who am I hanging out with? Who am I letting have so much of me, time of me, and invest in? Because they're either one way or another, they're going to influence you for the better or the worse. So we do have to do that kind of inventory from time to time.
Yeah. Like, how did I get here? Well, take a look. All right.
For sure.
So we have 2 last questions. We ask all our guests the same last questions. And LeaderImpact, so we want to refer to LeaderImpact, is dedicated to leaders having a lasting impact. So as you continue to move through your own journey, have you considered what you want your faith legacy to be when you leave this world?
Yes, I saw this question is so good, and there's one word, and it's what I always say on every podcast. It's what I hope about the book, but it's hope. My goal is to leave hope for you no matter where you're at, because the very thing that almost killed me is the very thing that God chose to use. I was 345 pounds, and I can name every single sickness and disease and all the things that I was having. I'm the last person you would expect to. We just finished a Spartan Beast, which is a half a marathon. It's 13.1 miles with 35 obstacles. We did it, about 12 of us. I'm the last person that would ever thought that would happen. The depression stuff. Now I'm trying to help people with mental illness or depression or anxiety, all the things. So hope is the word. No matter how, there was so many times when I could have been my final day on earth. It was just, I would have never saw myself getting to that point. And it was just so dark. It got so dark at one time in my life. So now, if I could have told Andy 14 years ago, hey, Andy, hang on. You can't even see yourself. You can't even see, like you talked about, we can't see outside the darkness sometimes when we're going through the storm or through the battle. Hang on. So that would be my lasting impact that I hope one day when God should take me or however it ends for me, is that people will say that was a dude of hope, and that he helped so many people, that he always pointed people to hope.
That's pretty awesome. That was good.
Thank you.
And my last question I ask everyone is, what brings you the greatest joy?
Man, there's so much, but right now, outside of the obvious, I got to throw this in here for my wife and my kiddos. I absolutely love my family. Absolutely love it. And my twins, they're 10, were born at a time when I I was just coming out of the dark side. So cool, the timing of it, of depression. But and I tell them all the time, they will never know the role they played in helping Daddy get out of his depression. And so for the obvious, it would be my wife and my kiddos, but the other is just helping people. I remember, I remember what it was like being just depressed, being in a very, very dark season, being hurt, just feeling alone, feeling like no value, feeling just helpless. And so now the greatest joy is when I get to pray with somebody, and sometimes it's through counseling. Sometimes it's just a quick 1-minute prayer at the end of a session if I'm at a conference or wherever I'm at. But getting to pour into people's life brings me so much joy.
Oh, well, you poured into mine, Andy.
Oh, well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, I want to thank you for just taking like 40 minutes with us and sharing some great content, yourself, your book. It's been a pleasure, and I won't forget this. And our conversations has just been fabulous. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you as well. It's been an honor, and I do appreciate you taking the time as well to hear my story.
I love it. I love hearing stories. Love it. So this ends our podcast, but if anyone wants to engage with you sort of outside, or if our listeners want to find you, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Awesome. Well, andyhoward.com. So ANDY Howard.com is my website. You can find out more about the book if you're interested, or search the When Words Don't Come Easy podcast, and social media as well on Instagram or Facebook. It's Andy B. Howard, like Andy Blake is my middle name. So Andy B. Howard.
All right. Well, Andy, thank you again. It has been a fabulous 40 minutes. The fabulous 40. There we go.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate you.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone else for joining us. If you're part of Leader Impact, you can always discuss or share this podcast with your group. And if you are not yet part of Leader Impact and would like to find out more and grow your leadership, find our podcast page on our website at leaderimpact.ca and check out our free leadership assessment. You will also find on our webpage Chapter 1 of Braden Douglas's book, Becoming a Leader of Impact. It is an amazing leadership book. You can also check out groups available in Canada at leaderimpact.ca, or if you're listening from anywhere else in the world, check out leaderimpact.com or get in touch with us by email, info@leaderimpact.ca, and we will connect you. And if you like this podcast, please leave us a comment, give us a rating or review. This will help other global leaders find our podcast. Thank you for engaging with us. And remember, impact starts with you.